Good evening, everyone. This is Chrissy McMahon, and you're listening to Alchemical Connections on Awake Radio. And we have our very, very special guest, Josh Reeves, straight from Dallas, Texas. He actually just got done another interview, so we're not going to try to expend him too much, but we'll try to get as much information as we can out of him. And I already did your introduction, so maybe just like to come on and say hello to our listeners. Thank you, Josh, for being here.
Oh, well, awesome. It's great to be here, Chrissy, and thanks for having me on the show. And I'm excited to get into whatever you'd like to talk about and just get into a discussion. You know, I get into so many different things, and I do so many different topics of research and areas that it's one of those things where it's always been enjoyable for me to look into all the different aspects of research and knowledge and everything else. But then, you know, as you get older and you start learning more and more, and then you find out that all these things that you never thought really all connected together really do all connect together. So it's an awesome journey, and I hope that your listeners out there are on that sort of path in their own unique way as well.
Absolutely. We're Awake Radio. We're trying to not only awaken people, but bring more information to those who are already awake and aware.
Right.
And my format is usually, I've been very fortunate to have some wonderful, wonderful guests who are just a plethora of information. And one of the things that I really wanted to find out was about your new film. But I'm interested in anything you want to share. I know that you're involved in so many wonderful projects, and I recently just realized, and I know I heard one before, that you actually read books and make podcasts out of them. And I mean, that's like the least of what you do, but you can talk about all the wonderful films and other documentaries that you've created, and anything else you'd like to, and please share about your website and any other projects that that you feel, you know, that you like to share about. So thank you again, Josh.
Awesome. Yeah, it's going to be a lot of fun here. Did you want to talk about the new film first? Did you want me to sort of get into some of that, or where would you like to start?
Well, just as an introduction, maybe you could just beyond the bio, what we have discussed, you can just share maybe briefly how you got into this field. I mean, I know it's all on your website and it's in your different podcasts, but maybe you can give us the skinny on how you became enlightened and moved into this genre of filmmaking and alternative media producing, and then we can talk about your different films and lead up to what you're doing now.
Well, absolutely, and you know, I think for myself, and I know as for everybody else out there as well, knows this, as you mentioned, you know, being you become awake and aware to all of this stuff. The thing about it is everybody out there is at a different level at this. You know, everybody's at a different stage in their enlightenment and in their journey and their understanding of this. And oftentimes when people get into arguments over information or get into arguments over, you know, the finer points of this or that, it really doesn't come from the fact most of the time that either one of these people are necessarily right or wrong. It comes strictly from the standpoint of the fact that everybody is just at a different level of this. So where I come from, where I stand on this is where I'm at is just a different level than where other people are at, and there are other people that are at higher levels than me, and I may be at a higher level than other people, but I'm also at a lower level than other people. But it's just this understanding that it's a constant evolution, and that is when you think you know everything there is to know, you're just deluding yourself. You know, there's always. I mean, I know way more than I did when I first started doing my radio show 6 years ago, and I thought I knew everything there was to know. And, you know, when you get in a position, Chrissy, where, as you know, from doing a show and having to sort of, you know, always have new material and new stuff going, you know, it's a good thing because it does not allow you to get lazy. It doesn't allow you to sit on your laurels. It puts you in a position where you constantly have to be doing your research, doing your homework, and learning more in order to bring that to your audience. And so for me, this whole process, my whole entire life of waking up to this stuff really has been a lifelong process. And it's just been one of those things that's gradually happened in stages through different levels, through different periods. And it's an evolution. And where I'm at now and making films and doing radio show and now doing live presentations on a lot of this stuff that I talk about in the new film, Lost Secrets of Ancient America, It's, you know, it's a place, I'm at a place now doing this and just have been on Coast to Coast AM and in May. I mean, this is just a
Wow,
huge thing for me.
congratulations.
Yeah, I mean, this is something that you know, I worked years and years to achieve, and 2 or 3 years ago, all the stuff I'm doing now was a pipe dream, and it's here, and that just comes as a result of just not giving up and not stopping and continuing to search for that greater context and that greater truth. So when I was a kid, I started out, you know, studying UFOs and stuff when I was in elementary school, and got into Kennedy assassination stuff when I was in high school, and then, you know, gradually into adulthood. You know, I went out and, which is always knew from the time when I was in high school, that you know, the world was not what they were teaching us. I knew that this was just, you know, enslavement. I knew the two-party system even before I was old enough to register to vote. I knew the two-party system was a fraud. I mean, it was just a constant revolution and evolution for me. And then when 9/11 happened, at that time I had a pretty good job working for in the tech industry. 9/11 happened, my job got shipped off to India, and I was kind of back at square one as I was, you know, back at the time when I was in high school and stuff. So I just said, enough is enough. You know, I've got to start putting my talents and what I know how to do towards trying to not only find the truth, but also find a way to get that truth out there to people. So I started doing, passing out DVDs in the streets, and just, you know, doing real, you know, in the street protest stuff, 2005, 2006. And then around 2007, I made my first film, 9/11 New World Rising. And at that point, I started realizing that I had to find a way to reach more people than just being in the streets.
Yeah.
So that was what led me to starting my radio show, and to also to where I'm at now, making this film on the rock wall in Rockwall, Texas, and the other lost secrets of ancient America. And so I'm working on volume 2 right now. And again, it's just a constant evolution, and it's a thing where if you stay on top of the desire to know more, the universe will respond, and it does bring that information to you when you truly want it for the right reasons.
Absolutely, and I just want to interject a little bit. What I wanted to say from the beginning, we have people that are listening tonight that have been waiting all day to listen to you. So I just wanted you to know that you have a great following, that people are interested in the information that you're sharing, and that we're just grateful that you are here to share it with us tonight. So I just want to say thank you again.
Oh, that's yeah. No, it's my pleasure to be here. It's the thing for me where it's not even, you know, it's doing a show or something like this is really not. For some people, it's a chore. For me, it's not a chore because it's just, you know, it's what I do. I mean, you know, every second of my day, I don't have really a life outside of this. I mean, it's 7 days a week for me. I'm constantly doing something, either working on the films or researching for the films or sending out DVDs or, you know, whatever it may be. But as I said, I think that it all comes down to a decision. And I think that a lot of people out there think they want the truth, you know, and they mean well. But it comes down to a point in your life where you kind of have to decide that, you know, you just want to put it all on the line and dedicate yourself to finding it. So I think that all those people out there who listen to shows like yours and shows like mine, I think that's one of the things that they have to, I hope that they're grateful for, you know, for what we do in this, because it is something where we are providing a service to people and really exponentiating how much you can know in a short amount of time. I mean, you know, I never claim that I have all the answers or that I can give anybody all the answers. But if you take the things that you hear me talk about in my films and on my radio show, and you go and look into that stuff on your own and really start to gain an understanding of it on your own, not just looking into it on your own, but gaining an understanding for it, you'll start to see revelations in places and things you never thought they were to be possible. Because, you know, that's really what all this is for. You know, I was inspired by other people who did it before me. And my job really is to just try to do as much as I can for truth while I'm here and able to do it. And hopefully that inspires other people. But that's really where I come from.
Absolutely, and that's wonderful. And it's funny because I've been in this since 2003, 2006. It's kind of the matrix that I came from with 9/11. And that was my whole inspiration. It was nobody wanted to listen to me, so I didn't have a way to give this information. And I found my way to Block Talk Radio, and then now I've migrated here to Awake Radio, and I'm just so happy. And we roar, and it's a little community we're building here, and it's just awesome that the years that it's taken us to get to the point where we're at with our understanding of things, and we're able to share that with everybody. And not that everybody's on the same page. I loved how you said that in the beginning, but we have so many people willing and wanting to hear this stuff and wanting to understand. So it's a great time. It's a wonderful time to be alive, and I just appreciate it. Thank you.
Absolutely. Well, let's see. What would you like to get into next, Chrissy? I'm open to talk about whatever you want to talk about.
I know you just got done an interview, so you're probably talked a little bit.
No. I'm good to go. Let's do this.
Excellent.
I'm ready to go.
Okay, well, let's talk about your first documentary in 2007. I kind of put my cheat sheet down, so that would be The Secret Right Now.
9/11 New World Rising.
9/11 New World Rising. That's, I think, where we all started from. So for me, I was just devastated that we went to war, and it seemed like to be the only person around me. I lived in the mountains at the time, and they were all really like pro-war, and they just thought it was amazing. And we had some people that were Arab that were working in the place where I worked at, and they were, I think if the FBI or the CIA or whoever came, they would have like drove them to these people's houses to turn them over. It was just like a really unbelievable time, and I didn't understand the dynamics of everything that was going on, but I knew in my heart that there's just so many inconsistencies. It was just a horrible, horrible time. So here we are, 2007. You made your first documentary, 9/11 New World Rising. So maybe you just want to give us a little brief introduction into that film.
Absolutely. And that was, for how that started for me was originally that film wasn't going to be a 9/11 film at all. It was actually going to be a film on secret societies and stuff of that nature. And during the course of while I was working on that film, I started noticing that there were, there were a lot of 9/11 films starting to come out around that time. And I started noticing that a lot of them didn't have certain pieces of information in there that I thought they should. And at the time, I didn't really think that maybe that was a part of some larger agenda to keep the truth hidden. I think certainly now I think that's the truth. But at the time, I just thought it was okay. These guys just missed this stuff or whatever it was. So I started noticing that, well, I've got all this 9/11 stuff. There's all of this information that nobody seems to want to put out or even mention. Up until that time, there were quite a few things in that film that up until that time were not really heavily mentioned in the field of 9/11 truth research, but they are now. So the film kind of seems dated when you watch it now, because it kind of seems, some of the stuff in there just seems like everyday stuff now. But at the time when that film was released, it was not, and it took a lot of people catching up to that film to get a lot of that stuff brought into the mix later on. But there's a lot of interesting footage in that film. It's up for free on YouTube. People can watch it. There's a lot of interesting angles and shots in there of different things. I tried to come at it from the standpoint of not having a pre-decided opinion on how, why, who, and all that. I really just, with that film, wanted to just show people the strange evidence and have them decide for themselves. And so I had people, who watched that film who believed that I was, supporting the no plane theory, and I had people who believed I was supporting this other theory, and that was the thing. And I think that's good. I think that's okay, because what that means is that people were taking away from it what they saw from it, not from what I was trying to get them to believe it was. And I think that's something else that is missing in a lot of films, and I really am always kind of suspect of that, and I definitely don't do that with my documentaries. I try to not come to conclusions for you. I try to allow you to come to your own conclusions based on the data and the information that I present in these films. And I think that's a lot better of a way to do it, because
the hallmark of journalism. That's absolutely the way you're supposed
it's
to do
missing.
it.
Yeah. I mean, we don't get that anymore. Everything you watch on TV, television documentaries, even independent documentaries, they all seem to be coming from a standpoint of a conclusion.
An agenda.
That's already been, they already come from a ending that they've already decided. Like this show that comes on the History Channel now, the America Unearthed, they do the same thing there. They already have a pre-decided explanation for what it is they claim they're going to uncover an hour before they ever start the hour-long show. And so they just work backwards from this premise that's already set, instead of saying, here's the information, here's the data. What do you think it is based on this? And that really comes into play in all of my films, and comes into play even more in the newest one, The Lost Secrets of Ancient America. But 9/11 New World Rising, I mean, none of the other films I made after that could have happened without that one. That was the one that put me on the map, got me a radio show, and yeah, that's where it all began.
That's awesome. And it's important too that even it's over 11, almost 12 years now since 9/11 happened, and we're still finding out things. It's just wonderful. You can go back and watch all the different documentaries that have been made, and there's hundreds of them now, and you can glean new information, because we can't possibly keep all that information in our head, and at the same time moving into the esoteric and the occult. I mean, that just, what you're saying about the secret societies and everything. So that's probably The Secret Right, Volume 1. That would be your next project.
Yeah, and how I got into that was just a complete accident. 9/11 New World Rising had been out maybe a few weeks. I mean, really not even that long at all. Maybe a week or two. And I had, at the time, I'd been going on some radio shows that some friends of mine had been doing, and this guy who was running the radio network asked me to do a show there. So I started doing my show, and at first it was just an hour-long show, Monday through Thursday. But the second show I ever did, we had an event here in Dallas when we premiered 9/11 New World Rising, and we had William Rodriguez come out to the event. Wow. and do a speech and stuff, and he watched my film, and I was his personal cameraman all day and stuff. It was a pretty cool time. And originally, though, we were going to have Professor Peter Del Scott come to this thing, and he couldn't make it at the time. And the second day that I did my radio show, Peter Del Scott sent me a message and said, "Hey, do you still want me to come to your event in Dallas?" And I said, "No, it's over. It already happened. Sorry." I said, "But I just started a radio show and I need a guest. Would you like to come on and be my first guest?" And I didn't dream he'd say yes, and he did. So here I was on my second show I'd ever done. I mean, I was totally green, wet behind the ears, didn't have a radio voice. I didn't really have any business being on radio at that point, other than the fact that I knew a little bit of stuff. And here I am. I've got former Canadian diplomat Peter Del Scott. So, we start getting into it, and I start talking about the usual milk toasty conspiracy stuff. I start talking about, CFR and Trilateral Commission. And all of a sudden in the middle of this, he says, "Well, those groups really aren't as powerful anymore as people say they are, and this, that, and the other. And really what you need to look into, there's another group that really is more powerful than them, and they're called the CMP, the Council for National Policy. And they were started in Dallas and all this stuff." And I was like, "What?" I'd never heard of this. So over the weekend, that was at the end of the week, and over the weekend, I started looking into this Council for National Policy stuff, and synchronistically, the same day I started researching it, there was a news story that came out. It said, Vice President Dick Cheney attends secretive right-wing group meeting in Utah, Council for National Policy. And I said, what are the odds? What are the odds that I would just find out about this group? And here it is. I was looking high and low to see if there's anything in the news on these guys, and there wasn't. And then today, they had a meeting this weekend. And as I started looking, I started noticing that all of these people that were members or past members of the group, the current membership lists are not made available, but the older ones are, and they're very secretive. They don't allow anyone to know who's in the group or where they meet or when they meet. They're way more secretive than the Bilderberg group or any of these other groups. And I started noticing that a high percentage of current and former members were all major guests on, conspiracy and truth or talk radio. And that became a huge red flag for me. I started saying, why are there 15 people here who are part of this secretive group that we never hear about talking in the conspiracy genre? 15 of these people are regular guests on the Alex Jones Show. Something is up here. So that's when I started going, this is, what did I get into here? Because I was all gung-ho, truth movement, I was all into all that stuff. And all of a sudden, within a week of starting this radio show, I have my paradigm yet again, completely shifted, turned around. And I start finding, these guys are, funded by the Rothschilds. They're connected to the Vatican, the Knights of Malta. They're connected to the CIA. They're connected to everything. People can watch my Secret Right 1 and 2 films on YouTube for free as well. And you can also get DVDs and stuff on my website. But it was a fascinating study, and I made 2 films on it and spent about 4 or 5 years exposing that stuff and getting into it, because there had been some people who had done some research on that prior to me getting into it, but really nobody had ever made a film on it. So I made the first film on the Council for National Policy, first 2 films. No one had really done that. And, all the while in the back of my head, I going back to 2004, when I was reading Jim Marr's book, Ruled by Secrecy, I still had this thing about this rock wall in my head. And I wanted to get something going on that, but I was pretty inexperienced at making films, and so I had to get that CMP and secret right information out, and so I could then have the experience to do this Rockwall project. And so after the Lost Secrets of Ancient, after the Secret Right Volume 2 came out, that film ends with a mention of the Rockwall and shows it there, and I talk about that being the next project. And so when I got into that, I really was excited, because I was like, okay, I did the 9/11 thing, I did the secret societies and the CMP secret right stuff. Now, we're going to get into this Rockwall thing, and this is going to be completely different than all the other stuff, I've talked about to this point. This is going to be, totally left field. We're not going to be, it's not going to have anything to do with these secretive groups or anything else. Boy, was I wrong. Boy, was I ever wrong. And it's just amazing, because all of that stuff, and little did I know, all the research and all of the reading and stuff I've done all these years up to this point, it all has come into play with this current project in ways that I never thought it would, because I originally, as I said, just set out to make a film about this Rockwall thing, and then started researching and trying to find precedents for this in other places in the United States, and it just has now become this complete unraveling of the true history and origins of mankind itself, and that's really no less than what it is.
Absolutely. I mean, it just takes you in so many different directions. It's mind-boggling, and when you first get on this path, I believe people can lose their mind.
Yeah.
Because it takes you into aspects of religion, not just politics, not just finance, but the occult. And and if you don't, if you jump into this, you have to have a really strong constitution to know that whatever you're looking at, you have to be able to be open-minded to it, and not fixate on any one issue or topic, because once you do that, you really can get lost. This can take you, instead of you, working it and trying to glean as much information as you can out of it. So that's my biggest thing in how you present the information, and I think that's so important, that we do it with love, and we do it with the open mind, and we do it without an agenda. So I just applaud you for the great mind that you had going into this, and what you've been able to accomplish. So this is really magnificent.
That's one of the main things I mentioned in the new film as well. Towards about the middle, or I guess towards the end of the film, really, there are a lot of people who have approached a lot of this research and information before me, and a lot of the this stuff has been covered in other ways, but it always up to this point has been covered and researched, as you mentioned, coming from the standpoint of an agenda, whether it's for the Christians to help strengthen and sort of justify their own existence, or whether it's neo-Nazis and white supremacist groups thinking that it, proves why they are indeed the master race.
And all this crazy stuff.
And so, I mean, and believe it or not, I'm not kidding you. I am not kidding. No, I mean, I'm not even being funny. There actually is a guy, I don't want to say his name, but there actually is a guy who's gotten into a lot of the ancient America stuff, and he's written a lot of books on it, and I actually read one of his books on my show. I'm glad I did, but it was before I knew that he is actually a actual Nazi. He really actually is. And somebody sent me this stuff, and I was like, no, come on. This guy, really? No. And I started looking into him, and oh, sure enough, just a real sick, sadistic past with this guy. I mean, there actually really are these types who believe that the only reason they want to uncover any of these lost secrets is to help justify their own existence. And I'm not trying to come at this from a standpoint to help back up, religion or science or, white supremacists or any other agenda. The simple fact of the matter is the extent of the cover-up of this stuff affects the lives of every single person on this planet, whether or not you think it does or know it does or not. And that's really the key component here. And unless we start to see some exposure on some of this stuff that just blows holes in the established dogma of science and religion, you know, we're going to stay in this constant state of, you know, really purgatory and never evolve and never get anywhere. We're still 50 years from now, people are still going to be griping and wondering why the New World Order is doing this, that, and the other. And really all the while, you know, we could have gotten to the end of this if we knew that the extent of what we're dealing with is much deeper than bankers and all this other stuff. There's a whole spiritual and sort of otherworldly, other dimensional end to all of this that gets into the realms of scientific stuff that, or, you know, science fiction stuff that some people just don't want to believe exists.
The paranormal, yeah. And before we go on to The Lost Secrets of Ancient America, you're in Texas, and there's a lot of alternative media there. I know you mentioned Alex Jones. You have Freeman. I mean, you have all different people coming out of that area. Are you connected with any of these people, and how do you feel about your being exposed to the different alternative media in your area? Like, I used to watch Occult Roundtable. I forget what it's, Esoteric Occult Roundtable or something it was called. And Freeman used to have some of those people on his show. And that was like my indoctrination into all this stuff, like trying to understand how it all worked. So there's a big community there. I think Paul Lafley and like all different kinds of people coming out of Texas. And maybe you can kind of give us a little overview of what it's like in your area for alternative media and alternative information.
Oh, it's a dark black hole here. I mean, it's a dark cavernous black hole here in Dallas, Texas for alternative research. I mean, it really is. I'm an island here. I mean, I you know, you're right. There is, I mean, I suppose there is a lot of alternative media type stuff in Texas, but only because this is, I mean, it's a huge, it's bigger than some countries, man. I mean, this is a huge place.
Yep.
I mean, the distance, I mean, if you've never been from Dallas, say in a car from Dallas to Austin, Texas, if you've never been in a car on that 4-hour trip, you don't even know how much just sheer open space there is between here and there. I mean, and you're talking about, you know, 4-hour distance between these cities. It's unbelievable. But so no, I don't really, I'm kind of a lone wolf, kind of always have been, kind of always will be. I don't really, you know, mingle with a lot of the other truther people out there. Freeman, you know, I'm cool with Freeman. I've been cool with Freeman for a long time. I actually, I got him his radio show back on Oracle. I was one of the founders of Oracle Broadcasting back in 2008, and I actually gave Freeman his radio show there. Got him and gave him his show and his intro. If you ever heard his show, but it was back when it was on, and he had the "Come on and take a free ride," and you hear that's me. That voiceover is me.
Oh my God, that's so cool.
I made that. I actually made that intro for him when we started the show. Yeah. So Freeman. You know, I haven't seen Freeman or talked to him in a few years, but he and I have always been cool, and we've seen each other at a few events through the years. And he's a real nice guy, and he's really the real deal. If anybody out there is wondering, he's not. You know, he is the real deal, guys. I've met him before. He really is the real deal. He's just like he is, you know, and you see him out normally. No, he's a really great guy and really sweet, and I like him a lot. But, you know, I don't really mingle with other conspiracy types or truther types at all. I really just, you know, focus doing on my work on my own. You know, there's a lot of awake people and a lot of aware people here in Dallas in this area to this type of information. I mean, I know tons of them here. There are tons of enlightened people here that are not just, you know, dumb hicks and rednecks and stuff, but there's just not a lot of people here doing anything about it, really. And, you know, some of the groups, I actually founded the first 9/11 group that was ever in Dallas. I started that and left that because it became something other than what it should have been about. You know, I don't really want to go into any more details other than that, but it you know, it
Yeah.
just became something that it shouldn't have been about. So I just didn't feel comfortable being involved with it anymore.
The
But
9/11 truth movement has had so many splits and divisions. I mean, I had people
yeah,
that I was in the original email group for the 9/11 scholars,
yeah,
and when they've broken up so many times and split off into to different entities, and people that I've been friends with for years are like, still fighting over whether there was planes or no planes, and it's like, well, okay, whatever it is or it isn't, it still is. There's a problem
they've
here.
moved on to a million other things since
You
then
know?
too. That's the
Yeah,
thing.
it's like let's put everything on the table and let them sort it out. But we have evidence. Why don't you just move forward with evidence? Just throw it all on the table to let them try to figure out what's right or what's wrong. If you're going to take it in a legal sense or whatever, just keep putting the information out there. That's the most important thing. And I remember I told my sister, like I tried to tell my family, and I said, well, in 10 years. And it was amazing, like almost exactly 10 years. That's when things started really breaking. I think it was like a spell, and people started opening up and started to like breathe and come together and realize there was other people around that, other news programs, alternative media and alternative documentaries wasn't our only connection. We were actually connecting with individual people. So, and I think that's what makes your work so pure, is that you did remain by yourself, and you kind of went on your own, blazed your own trail in making your documentaries, and that's what makes them so fresh, and they're going to be timeless. They're not really going to be dated, whether the information is known or not. There's always going to be people who are going to click on one of your videos and say, wow, is that true? How can that be true? And it's already like, we would like to think that a majority of people understand these things are real and this is what's really happening. But we have no way of knowing that people are going to let go of their belief systems. People will believe in what they believe as long as it works for them. And
Well, you mentioned
until
something. I want to mention something because this is the second time you sort of gone on those lines, and there's something very important there you mentioned earlier about the sort of information driving people crazy, and I
yeah.
find I find that it's kind of like, well, have you ever noticed, Chrissy, that certain people, if they do drugs or alcohol, they're somehow they're okay and they don't ever get crazy or do anything, but other people who maybe were kind of little off before, you give them just a tiny bit of drugs or alcohol, and it's like fuel on a fire. They are just all over the place. That's sort of an analogy that works well for this type of information. I find people that are, pretty together already tend to absorb this stuff and take it in and really understand it a lot more. People who are already, a little off from the world. And look, I mean, the world will make you crazy. Regardless of whether you're crazy or not, this world can make you crazy. And when you have somebody like that who's already maybe a little off and maybe a little not all there, and then you start piling on Building 7 stuff on them, and, you start piling on, all the conspiracy stuff and secret societies, it becomes too much for them, and they either shut down completely or they just fly off and do something stupid. It's what I find is that I think it's, as much as I hate to say it, it kind of does, in a weird, strange, and kind of sick, twisted way, it does sometimes sort of weed out people who aren't going to go the whole way anyway. And, that oftentimes that's not a bad thing. I mean, it sounds bad, but
That's a good way to look at it. That's really positive.
because you don't want those people, they're not going to go all the way anyway. And once you get to a certain point of understanding of this stuff, there's not going to be any turning back for you. And many of you out there listening may already be at that point. And, you may have some of these people who can't handle how deep it really goes. So they're going to get to a point and, you're just going to lose them because they can't seem to wrap their minds around, again, being open to this stuff. As soon as you say, well, I won't believe that because it doesn't fit in, to my understanding what I believe is possible. As soon as you do that, they got you. Because we're well beyond the realm of believability at this point as far as what, I won't believe that's not possible. Well, maybe it's not possible in what you currently believe to be possible based on what we've been programmed with and what we've been told is possible. But I promise you the reality of it is well beyond the realms of possibilities at this point.
Absolutely, and that's perfectly said. We have about 10 minutes to the top of the hour, and I was wondering if you wanted to take maybe a little break. I'll put a little music on, and you can kind of get yourself situated, and we'll be back at 10 o'clock, and we'll talk about your films.
Absolutely.
Okay, wonderful. Okay, we're going to do a little. Welcome back, Josh.
All right. Good to be back with you here. Yeah, the newest film that I just have released, as you mentioned, is the Lost Secrets of Ancient America, Volume 1. If people want to find out how to find my films and my radio show and all that stuff, they can go to my website. It's theglobalreality.com, or they can just go to Google and type Josh Reeves, and my website will be the first one that comes up. And we've got digital downloads of the film there. People can get Blu-ray and DVD copies as well of Lost Secrets of Ancient America. And we also have the trailer there for Volume 2, which I'm working on right now. But as I mentioned before the break, that was the sort of the genesis of this film was this Rockwall thing. I had been reading Jim Marr's book in 2004, Ruled by Secrecy, and he mentioned in there this, maybe one day we'll have the answers to this ancient, mysterious Rockwall in Rockwall, Texas, and it just about knocked me on the floor because I had experiences growing up around that area that were strange, unexplained things, missing time events, and strange spiritual energy happenings, UFO sightings, on and on and on. Myself and friends I grew up with and their parents and just a lot of people that I knew. And so, having always kind of wondered about these things and wondered what was out there around that area, when I heard about this Rockwall thing, something subconsciously in my mind, even though I had no information or data to back it up, told me that somehow whatever this Rockwall thing was, it was the answer to these questions that I was looking for answers for. And so, as I talked about earlier, progressing through all the other films and doing radio show and stuff, when I finally got to work on this project, we shot all the stuff on location in Texas, Oklahoma, Arkansas. We went to Alabama, Mississippi. We went to several states, and we're going to even more for this new film, Volume 2. And I came from the standpoint of trying to make a film about the rock wall, and then upon trying to find, were there other things like this in other places in the United States found? Is there any kind of other precedent for this? It led me into this much deeper area of research and finding out that there's a whole history of cultures and civilizations that have been known about for long periods of time, thousands of years, that or even older than that, in North America, long before the Native Americans or colonial Americans or anything else. And that's really what this first Volume 1 of this film really gets into. We get into a lot of the stuff about the rock wall. And if you don't know what the rock wall is, it's a structure that is under the town, the small bedroom community. It's a suburb of Dallas. And buried under this town is a 20-diameter wall made of all these strange minerals like zircon, garnet, titanite, brookite, tourmaline, stuff we use to make alloys, rare earth metals, all of this. It's leveled at 550 feet above sea level, meaning as the terrain changes, the leveled height of this structure does not change. That can't happen on its own. That can't happen naturally, nor can these materials that these cast stones that are held together with a strange quartz geopolymer substance, these can't occur naturally in nature either. And I'm going to be doing a live presentation on all this stuff coming up in September 29th in Houston, Texas. And I'm going to be showing on hand there the examples of the various minerals that are found in the rock wall and showing to people how they form naturally in nature, because they have a certain set of conditions that these minerals have to form in, and they do not form this way and are not formed this way in rock wall. Somehow in these rock wall stones, they are crushed up into a substance that bricks have been cast out of, and somehow with a technique unknown to us today with modern technology, somehow, because most of the time if you take materials, specifically minerals and stuff like this, and you start mixing them together, the molecular structure of these individual minerals will always bond and always create a new substance. Here in the Rockwall stones, they don't. They remain independent in situ in the stones, even though they don't form naturally on together. Because, well, for example, tourmaline only can form naturally in nature on quartz. That's how it forms. In the Rockwall stones, you have absolutely zero quartz. But yet, to make a 20-mile diameter structure, you would have to have had millions of tons of leftover quartz. Where did all the quartz go that they had left over when they made these bricks? Well, that explains why when the analysis was done on this strange mortar that holds the Rockwall stones together, it was found, the scientists were confused because they couldn't figure out why they figured out it was what they called a geopolymer mortar made from 3 different types of crystals, quartz crystals that were brought from different locations. And that explains exactly how we know this is not a natural formation as the Smithsonian Institute deemed it in 1927, which, by the way, has not been challenged all the way up till today. That stayed scientifically intact because no one wants to challenge it. But the fact of the matter is the quartz geopolymer substance is absolutely the proof that these stones were cast. And I have actually located the quarry. I have located the place where the materials came from. And we talk about that in Volume 1 of the film as well. And we're going to be getting more in depth into that in Volume 2. But there absolutely is a cover-up going on to keep this stuff hidden from the general public. And the reason that is simply, people always ask me that question more than any other, why would they want to keep this covered up? And simply the fact of the matter is that it absolutely destroys all previously established narratives for the history of mankind, the history of humankind, and it also smashes, the whole dogma of, fundamentalist Christianity of the earth is 7,000 years old and all this stuff. It smashes science, it smashes religion, it smashes the entire fundamental basis of their narrative of world reality up to this point, and that's why they want to keep it covered up.
Yeah, and I would be interested, too, to find out if you had taken any additional steps to find out more information from the Smithsonian, because a lot of the skulls and different information is being locked up in there, as far as we know, that, they're keeping this information, they're keeping it for themselves, but they're not sharing it with the rest of the world, like the Vatican,
And that runs, and the interesting thing about that is that that runs absolutely contrary to the reason why the Smithsonian was set up in the first place.
Right,
yeah,
absolutely.
John Smithson, who actually was a Freemason as well, he set it up originally as it was supposed to be a repository of relics and knowledge and everything else, so that people in the future, when mankind had progressed to a state of greater understanding than was available at that present day and age, we would have more of a context than we did then of what these ancient relics and things were trying to tell us. And that is indeed absolutely why they wanted to cover it up. So after his death, they turned the Smithsonian Institution into a repository of knowledge and information that would be withheld from the general public, not shared with the public. And a lot of people don't know this. One of the most common misconceptions, it was a misconception I had as well, because that's the way they present it to us. But when you research this, you find out the Smithsonian Institution itself is not actually a federal government-controlled institution. It is actually an outside funded institution that's funded by European interests, European banker interests. It's interests out of Rome, as you mentioned, the Vatican. But where they confuse it is the museums, the Smithsonian museums, and the Smithsonian stuff that you go visit in Washington, D.C., the museums themselves are controlled by the federal government, and they are taxpayer funded. But that's the museums. That's not the institution itself. But they confuse that in the minds of the general public, so that the general public believes that, this is...
It's all one and the same.
Yeah, it's all one and the same, and it absolutely isn't. The Smithsonian has offices in almost every country in the world, and the reason they do is so that anytime any new discoveries are found, they can get their people out first to retrieve it or hide it or whatever else they need to do. And it's interesting that the only countries in the world, Chrissy, where the Smithsonian doesn't have offices of people ready to go are all the countries that they tell us are the big threats. I mean, let's do the list here. North Korea, Iran,
That's what I was thinking about Iraq, how they
Cuba.
looted the museums. That was the first thing they did,
That was the
when they
first thing they did.
attacked. And
Yep.
they took all the major artifacts. They knew where to go. They knew what they were looking for, and they took the most valuable, information-packed items. And
Well, the interesting
still,
thing that they took that really interests me the most, as you mentioned, there's BBC footage of this. It's unbelievable. I've seen it. They actually show these guys. I mean, their faces. They show their faces and everything. I mean, special forces went in. They blew the door off with C4, and the thing is, they had all sorts of the replicas out in the regular part of the museum. These guys blew right past the replicas. They knew which ones were replicas and which ones weren't. They went right to the vault, and when they blew the doors off the vault, what was in the vault was were all the Sumerian clay tablets, Sumerian cylinder seals, strange artifacts depicting reptilian humanoids that go back to the Ubaid period, which actually predates Sumeria. But on top of all that, there were thousands and thousands of, this is what struck me when I saw the footage, was that there were thousands of gin bottles, going back to the Babylonian period, many of which disappeared. Now, the reason why those were in that vault is because some of these supposedly, actually all of them, supposedly contained spirits, demons, spirits that had been captured in these going back to Babylonian times. They had them going from Babylonian times all the way up to the present. They had them from all periods in there. Now, where did those go?
Well, when you're talking about it, I kind of giggled, and I'm thinking about the Nazis. What the Nazis did, went around looting all these different countries.
They were doing the same thing.
Same thing.
Yeah.
Yeah. So it's, oh my God, history repeats.
But what they were looking for, and what they were accessing, what they were trying to find, was really the same things. I mean, not Plato, but Sir Francis Bacon. His book, The New Atlantis, he talks specifically about there being this New Atlantis, in the West, built on the Atlantis of old. He talked about there being flying machines and skyscrapers. They knew that there was something lost here that would be found by people in the future that would give whoever found it great power and strength. And that's the thing about the rock wall that, when I think about that, strikes me the most, because the strange thing about this 20-mile diameter rock wall structure is that with the crystalline makeup that I mentioned earlier, it causes this wall to produce piezoelectrical energy currents that respond to frequencies. Meaning when you hit this wall with certain low-frequency vibrations, low-frequency fields, it starts to shake and oscillate and roar. It makes huge roaring sounds and produces an electric current. They had a backhoe digger on this thing last time they had done a dig in the late 90s, and the low-frequency oscillations from the engine caused the entire 20-mile diameter wall to start shake and vibrate and producing electrical currents, and they had to shut the engine off because the backhoe was shaking like it was about to take off into the air.
Wow.
And this thing seems to be some sort of I think it was either some kind of a launching pad or some sort of electrical energy grid thing, but also a structure. And that's why a lot of the information definitely points in the direction of this thing being what people would consider an Atlantean civilization. And the reason is because at the bottom of this thing, when they started excavating down, they started finding shark's teeth embedded all on the outside of the wall. And there was also fresh sand dollars at the bottom. When you cracked them open, they had fresh meat in them. Now, this is North Texas. There hasn't been ocean here in a long, long time from what they tell us. So why were these sand dollars, why were they still fresh? Well, the reason it is that this is what the soil analysis on the rock wall tells us. There was a catastrophic event somewhere in the area of the Gulf of Mexico about 11,000 years ago, between 11 and 12,000 years ago, that caused all of this overburden and material to come up over the wall and cover it very quickly in a catastrophic event. This is what we know as the flood stories we've got civilizations going back long before the Bible, long before any of these other cultures that all have deluge stories. And this is what the soil analysis of the rock wall shows conclusively, that in that time period, there was a catastrophic event that covered this thing. So when you start digging down to the bottom of this, because this soil and all this overburden covered the wall so quickly and in such a short amount of time,
it was like hermetically sealed.
it was absolutely, because it was absolutely hermetically sealed, that sealed the water, all of that soil way down there, 7 stories to the bedrock, sealed all of that stuff up. So when it started being pulled out, it was like it was just pristine. It was just in there. And being it's situated on the 33rd degree parallel line, and, you know, after the flood, we had the rise of civilization again that appeared conveniently after the flood, right on the 33rd degree parallel, yet again in Babylon, where you started having these, the first messianic deity, Oannes. This is why he was really the proto Jesus, and this is why the Pope has the fish hat to this day. He came up and had the same stories of, you know, put no other gods before me and could walk on water and all these stories. And I get into that extensively in the film. But we start to see this connection between the 33rd degree parallel and the sites where a lot of these materials for the rock wall are located. A lot of these tourmalines and rare metals are only found in places like Pakistan. There's a mine there where some of them are found. It's smack dab on the 33rd degree parallel. There's another mine in Afghanistan where some of these rock wall materials are found. It's smack dab on the 33rd degree parallel. And all along the United States, along the 33rd degree parallel from the East Coast to the West Coast, you have ancient sites, mound sites, petroglyphs depicting strange alien creatures all along this line. And then you have this wall situated just short of that. And it really, really starts to become apparent that this technology that they're searching for might very well be located or be a part of this rock wall thing. I mean, L3, who is a division of British Aerospace, they're the second biggest outsourcer to the CIA and the Pentagon in the United States. They built their offices in Rockwall right smack dab on top of part of the wall. Wow. And the famous channeler, Ashiana Dean, was asked about the rock wall, and this entity that she channeled said that it was a storehouse of technology after the fall of Atlantis. And so many things have come into play that really seem to make that be really true, considering you have this huge military contractor building offices there. I mean, it could be, very well could be possible that there is some sort of underground structure containing ancient technology. The reports out of the Rockwall newspaper in the late 1800s detail underground subterranean chambers where they found the abode of a giant. Other reports talk about 2 black marble pillars that shone like something from the Orient. This fits the description identically of the pillars of Hercules or the pillars of Solomon, that were 2 black marble pillars that were carved by Enoch during the Atlantean age that had the laws mankind were supposed to follow. I mean, there was a report of these being seen, something like this, very similar to this being seen underneath Rockwall. So all of these things continue to add up and come together, where we start to see, especially the Sumerian king list information, where it talks about this 432,000-year reign, and right at the 230,000-year mark or so is when they started building these 8 cities that these Anunnaki gods ruled over for 432,000 years prior to the flood. There was a strange garnet, 2.5-ton garnet stone found near the rock wall that had a hieroglyphics on it no one had ever seen before, and it since has disappeared, supposedly into the hands of a prominent Rockwall congressman. Supposedly Congressman Ralph Hall is who has this thing. What's interesting is the hieroglyphs, a match for these hieroglyphs was found on a coin that was found in a soil strata that falls right into that dating period of when these cities were built, right at 200,000 years. It was found in a well in Illinois, and has the same exact hieroglyphics that this 2.5-ton garnet stone has, and the soil strata that it was dated in, that it was found in, dates to 220,000 years. This coin was in the, of course, in the possession of the Smithsonian. Mm-hmm. The Smithsonian said they had it, they knew where it was, and that another Rockwall researcher could come and take pictures of it and get video and whatever else. And when he went to go do that, they said, "Oh, well, we're sorry. We don't have that. We lost it. We don't know where it is now." Right. But this hieroglyph, 220,000 years, it was the soil strata it was found at. And again, that matches with this tablet that was in the possession of J.P. Morgan for a period of time. It's now in a museum in Oxford in England. It's called the Sumerian King List, and it details this 432,000 year reign. And I talk about that in the film. 432,000 appears again and again in ancient literature, in ancient texts. There's an importance on that number. So it's very interesting that both the soil data, some of the analysis that's been done at the rock wall stuff, that right in that 200,000 year range, time range, is what we're looking at for the date on the rock wall. And that's what has made a lot of past researchers and people not believe it was a structure that wasn't natural because of how old it is, and this, not knowing that there actually, were people around back then. It's pretty wild.
So the rock wall is over 220,000 years old.
Yes.
And the flood, it's believed that the catastrophic event could have been around 11,000 years ago, maybe longer.
Yeah, right at about 11,800 years is what the soil analysis shows. And there was actually an article that came out about a month ago that talked about some new evidence they found that, a catastrophic event definitely happened on Earth that caused a flood 11,800 years ago. So we're pretty much in the target range for that. But what's interesting is that the rock wall itself was built to last. When it was built, the engineering techniques that were employed in it, we barely have a grasp on today, one of which is this natural buttressing that it has. It has a buttressing built into the wall that allows it to withstand a live load, meaning you could put something on top of it and it could withstand that without crush. That's an engineering feat. Niobium, which is one of the elements found in there, we didn't even know about niobium until the early 1800s, and we use it today in, we use it in pipelines, we use it in jet engines, rocket engines, we use it in big hadron colliders like CERN, magnetic resonant imaging systems, MRIs. We use all of that, niobium for that. And the reason we use niobium in those things is because it's a great conductor, number one, and it can, when you use it in combination with other materials, it can make all your other materials withstand heat at greater temperatures than it could on its own. This is another reason why we know, talking about 9/11 earlier, this is why we know that those indestructible cores of those buildings could not have collapsed or been evaporated into nothing from just jet fuel and other parts of the building, because the steel of those indestructible cores of the World Trade Centers were reinforced with this element called niobium. Niobium we get from another element called columbite, and you have to extract mass amounts of it out to get this. But what it does is it reinforces your steel or whatever materials you're going to use, and it not only acts as a conductor, but also keeps high levels of heat from getting beyond usable air temperatures, meaning even if that steel were to get into the 3,000 degree or 4,000 degree heat level, the steel at the World Trade Centers would not have collapsed or just evaporated into dust. The only thing that could have caused that to happen was a chemical reaction. When you want to extract this niobium from the columbite, it's a chemical process to do it. It's the same thing whenever you're cleaning any sort of rock off of another type of matrix. You take a chemical solution and it eats away the stuff you want, you don't want, and leaves the stuff you do want there. So undoubtedly, a chemical reaction of some sorts, regardless of what you believe about 9/11, is absolutely scientifically the only thing that could have evaporated those cores into nothing. And somehow, whoever built this rock wall, the engineer who built this, knew that if they used this niobium in with the rest of these materials, that they could get a much more stable effect, especially with the whole thing of it being a conductor, because that's key, especially because the rock wall itself produces a strange magnetic field, it produces an electromagnetic field, but it doesn't produce any sort of magnetism. Like you can put when there's no magnetite in it, you can put a magnometer on it, it won't do anything. But if you try to go up near that thing with certain devices, it'll just fry them. Wow. So that what we see here is that, again, there was a level of sophistication of engineering that went into the building of this that's beyond anything that we could do today, just strictly because so much of the materials that are found in this thing are, I mean, we consider them to be precious and semi-precious stones. The price would be ridiculous. But if price and money was no object to you, and you could build whatever you wanted to build out of whatever materials you could find, you know, price be damned, you would use those type of materials for one reason and one reason alone, because they withstand the test of time. When you combine all those into the Rockwall stones, you have a stone that has a hardness that is almost, it's about 1 Mohs scale less than a diamond being 10. You've got something here that's about a 9. It's harder than any granite that we have or that's known to mankind, and it's absolutely an artificial creation. And the fact that this stuff was built to last definitely shows us why there's such a cover-up. Somebody in the distant past knew that somebody in the future would uncover this, and it would give a lot of power, because if it's true what a lot of other researchers have shown, that there was some ancient worldwide energy grid that went along these ley lines in these ancient sites, and many of these mound sites I visited for the film are along these ancient sites as well, and they're all aligned to the equinoxes and the solstices, and they're all aligned to Cygnus and all these other same strange celestial locations. Some sort of worldwide energy system, energy grid that gave power to all people of the world for free existed in ancient times. And if that came out right now in our day and age, it would bring about the end to the tyranny in which we exist in, period, end of story.
Well, yeah, I hear what you're saying, but like we talked about in the beginning, most people will hang on to their dogmas, and they're not going to let go. And unfortunately, yeah, I think it's even being predicted that there is going to be a split. There's going to be like the haves and have-nots. There's going to be people who are open to this information, are open to the changes that are taking place and will be taking place, and there's other people who are going to be steadfast in their old belief systems, and they're not going to budge. And it's going to be really hard to reach them, and it's going to, I don't want to say a war, but it's, you know, I think when the first Bush election, for the Bush the Lesser, I call him, I listened to people talking, and they actually called the fight between the Republicans and the Democrat a war, because people couldn't come together. People were so divided, and I think that's kind of what we have, even though we have this explosion of openness and people willing to listen because they see so much abuse in government today, and they see the hypocrisies. But I still think that as far as religion and science even is concerned, there's going to be you're going to be real hard pressed. I know biologists, microbiologists, and I know philosophers that are well-established people in their field that, you know, they can't even apply quantum physics to the macro level. They think it only works on the quantum level. They don't see that it applies to all life, you know, from quantum to the farther vast of the universe.
Yeah, universal absolute.
Yeah, and they don't get that. They just can't grasp that. And these are intelligent people. They're not dumb. I mean, they understand the concepts better than I can. But
the programming that they've been taught, and
right.
the program indoctrination that they went through to get to where they are is so strong that it's not their fault, really. They can't break through that.
Absolutely, yeah. And more on the rock wall. How about the size of the bricks themselves? I mean, what's the dimensions for the individual bricks?
Well, it's a good question because it varies. It varies widely, and we really have such a small amount of data. One of my main goals is to have a rock wall dig conducted, a current one, because we need to have all this stuff a lot of the stuff I've talked about here tonight. We need to have it documented. You know, the shaking of the bulldozer and all this stuff. It needs. My plan is to have a new dig conducted and have all this stuff, every step of it, documented for a future film of mine, so that people can see all this stuff and really the truth of the rock wall for themselves. So because we only have data from really a couple of different digs, we don't really have the complete answer for how big the stones are. All I can tell you is they vary widely, as far as in some places they seem to be uniform in shape, and in other parts of the wall they seem to be not uniform in shape. And for example, no one's actually gone all the way down to the bottom bedrock of it yet. They've gone down pretty far, but no one's actually gone all the way down to the bottom yet. But what they have discovered is that the deeper that you dig, the larger and older that these stones become. Wow. And up towards the top, there seems to be some larger type stones up towards the top that don't seem to be near as old. And as you look at the layers of this thing, you can definitely tell that there was some renovations done to it through the years. There was additions made to it through the years, because you can see that, especially in some of the newer, shall I say, newer layers, couple thousand-year-old layers, there are building materials that are not the same building materials as were employed in the rest of the wall. Yeah, absolutely. They were just taking whatever they could find, and they were adding on, either doing repairs or adding on to it. But there was definitely evidence that it was used for a variety of structures. I mean, a variety of purposes, meaning whatever it was originally built for, I think varied greatly from what it eventually was used for, probably as a structure and as a dwelling. I mean, they found a tunnel that went from what they call this rock-lined temple dome room that no one's ever been able to go in yet, that lies underneath the old courthouse in Rockwall, Texas. They found a tunnel that goes all the way down to the Trinity River, which is a few miles away. Someone had built an underground tunnel where they could go and get fresh water and bring it back up to the top of the hill to this rock-lined temple chamber without being seen. So this led to a lot of speculation that, well, were they hiding from these giants? Were they trying to hide from someone? Who are they trying to not, be seen by? Again, it brings up more questions than there is answers. But we definitely know that at all the different digs that have been conducted up to this point, we have seen a big time variety of stones, from stones that maybe, let's say some of the average stones I think we've seen. If you go to the old Rockwall Courthouse in downtown Rockwall, they've got a little some stones that came from a 1976 dig that they did, and they've set them up outside the old Rockwall Courthouse and just thrown. They didn't have it has some of the real mortar on it on the outside where you can see it, but they just threw concrete together and stacked these things up. And you can kind of go and see what the actual stones look like. But these are probably about, I'd say anywhere from 2.5, 3.5 feet long, maybe about 10, 11, 12 inches thick. But they vary in size up to that. I mean, some of them are on up to 3.5, 4.5 tons in weight. It's a very, very heavy stone because all the materials that it's made out of are very, very heavy on their own, being precious and semi-precious stones. And that's the other thing that the mortar substance I mentioned earlier does. When they start digging out these stones, they notice that when it's exposed to air, it starts to grow and expand, because it's an absolutely watertight seal mortar. And so that's what a lot of people believe. Well, this was some kind of a seawall, and the whole Atlantis thing kind of figured in a lot more there, because they could definitely tell that it was built on the edge. The ocean came right up to the edge of this thing in whatever time period it was built. And the foundation stones, they said that some of the foundation stones supposedly were built, when they were built in 3.5 feet of seawater when they were constructed.
Yeah, and just give us a perspective about where is Rockwall, Texas, in relation to the ocean coast.
Well, you're talking about 4.5, 5 hours south. So you're talking 400 or 500 miles south. North Texas, if you look on a map, Dallas and Fort Worth and Rockwall is in the area of North Texas, which is in the it's not on the Panhandle part, but it's in the sort of the middle top area, right or south of the Oklahoma border. And then
it's right in the center, huh? Or more to the east.
Yeah,
it's a little more eastern than central.
And you've got the 33rd degree parallel runs right through there, goes all the way out to Roswell, runs all the way out, all the way to California, around the Earth. And then you can just go type 33rd degree parallel into a search engine and look at all the locations on Earth where the 33rd degree parallel lies. And then go look at where some of these minerals that I named that are found in the rock wall are found. That'll blow your mind just on its own.
Absolutely. That's, And before we go on to your current research, I thought it would be important for maybe we could discuss solutions with what is being envisioned to see this research continue. So what can you do, or what can we do to help to to move this forward so that we can do some further digging and do some further research and get some more information out there to the public, concrete, firsthand.
Well, the most important thing we're trying to do first, for the longest time, I was kind of putting my my priorities towards getting a dig done first, and really I've changed my priority on that now. The most important thing that and this, I don't know how much this costs. I know it costs a lot of money, probably in the hundreds of thousands of dollars.
Yeah.
But the most important thing is to get LiDAR data established in Rockwell first. For the strict number one reason is it's never been done, and if it has, it's never been released to the public. And what this LiDAR does, it's been used now in several locations in an archaeological standpoint, and they have located deep buried cities that have never been discovered before, because what LiDAR does is it shoots a laser beam down from an aircraft and bounces the signal back up, and it allows you to see a 3D topographical image of everything underneath the surface, and allows you to move terrain and trees and houses and buildings, whatever else, off of the picture and see in 3D everything that's under there. So if we had LiDAR analysis done at Rockwall, we would be able to, for the first time, have an actual 3D image and a map of how big this thing is, what it actually looks like, where the locations of it are set at. And then once we have that established, it would be a hop, skip, and a jump to find a piece of property or an area where a crucial dig could be conducted. And then we would be a lot better off. Now, as it stands now, to find a place to dig, you either have to find somebody who knows for a fact already they've got some of this on their property, or you have to go by some of the made by hand maps, which is really all we have up to this point, and then hope you get lucky. So it's a very difficult thing. So right now we're trying to do that. We're also trying to get volume 2 of the film off the ground. People can go to my website, theglobalreality.com, or just type Josh Reeves into Google. They can go there and they can make a donation at my website, or they can buy one of our films, whatever else they want to do there and help our work. And they can send me a personal message as well at my email, globalrealityshow@gmail.com. You can also just go to the contact button at my website and email me there. But, if you want to help out with these projects, if you can help us out financially or however else you can do it, that's where you can contact me at. We're also getting ready to launch I'm getting ready to launch a new television channel, online TV channel really soon, called museontv.com. And we're going to be having weekly video shows up there. And I'm going to be doing live updates and stuff. So, oftentimes when I'm out shooting in the field for these films, we find new information, and then, it takes a while for you to get it out into a film, because films are very difficult to make and take a long time to make, and I'm just a one-man operation. So,
and can you spell that too, Museon?
Museon, MUSEION TV.com. It's not up yet. The website's not up yet, but we're going to be launching that sometime in the next 2 weeks. And we're going to have the Museon was the name of the library in Alexandria in Egypt, where all of the knowledge of all things arts. And so this is kind of going to be a little departure away from just the conspiracy or truther stuff for me. We're going to be having shows on Museon that encompass all things. I mean, we're going to have a yoga and a Reiki show on there. We're going to have just all kinds of stuff that gets into a whole variety of things where people can come and get information, get it very quickly in a video format, away just from just the audio and the film stuff. I'm really just trying to branch out and get information to people in a manner as quickly as we possibly can, because some of the stuff that comes out, you find it so just so off the cuff, sometimes you just can't wait to present it into a film. You've got to get it out there now. And so I think that's going to give us an outlet. But like I said, I'm a one-man person, and I run my radio show on my own, and I don't have outside, corporate sponsorship or outside sponsorship from universities or everything else. I'm a one-man person here.
Hold on, Josh. We're getting some kind of feedback. I'm not sure. Go ahead, try it again.
And yeah,
let me try to call you right back. We're getting some kind of really crazy feedback. I'll call you right back.
Okay. Still doing it?
It could be my headphones. I'm not sure if it's coming over across the radio, but yeah. I don't hear it.
Okay.
Somebody will let us know if it gets really bad. But yeah.
Anyway, that's what I'm saying. I'm a one-man operation, and so everything I do, it comes from the support of my listeners and people who follow me out there. So any contributions people can make towards our work will help us be able to get this film. We're trying to raise right now about $2,000 to finish Volume 2 of Lost Secrets of Ancient America. We've already been to 5 states for this one. We got about 6 more states to go. We're going to be visiting a lot more sites: the Serpent Mound in Ohio, the Newark Earthworks, Poverty Point. We've got about 20 more sites to visit. We've already been to Chaco Canyon. We've been to the Lovelock Caves in Nevada. We've been to Lake Tahoe. Several places we've already shot at for Volume 2 of the film. And we're going to be getting more into just who these ancient people were, just what connections they have, and further information on the rock wall as well.
Okay. So what is the premise for Lost Secrets of Ancient America Part 2 that you're really trying to bring out in the new film?
Well, with this film, when you watch Volume 1, you'll see that we only are able to touch the tip of the iceberg and really not extensively get into some of these sites, specifically the Serpent Mound. We talk about the Serpent Mound in Ohio a bit in Volume 1, but stuff like the fact that it has piezoelectrical energy properties, just like the rock wall does, the fact that it depicts this genetic engineering with a sperm entering the
Okay, Josh, I'm going to stop you because it's so bad. Nobody can hear what you're saying.
Okay.
And I'm not sure what the problem is. We tried. The only other thing I could do is reboot the SAM. I wouldn't do that. I'm not sure what our options are here. It doesn't seem to be me. It just seems to be on your end, and
I'm not hearing anything on my end, so I don't know.
It's just real choppy. If you went to the website, you'd hear it in a minute. And you're giving us some really cool information, and I don't want anybody to miss it. So
well, why don't we just try to do it? Why don't we just try to finish it up another time?
Oh, cool! I would love that, and I would love that.
We can do that.
Awesome.
We can do it next week, or we can do it another time. I mean, just send me an email, and we'll just finish up and finish it up another show. Because I'm open to do it. So I've got one tomorrow, but I don't have any more for a couple of weeks after that. So just send me an email.
Okay, well, we can do the same time next week. How about that?
Yeah, let's do that.
Okay, that'd be awesome.
All right,
Thank
Chrissy.
you, Josh.
Bye.
Thanks so much. Bye-bye.